Good afternoon, everybody. It's so wonderful to see so many students here this afternoon. To those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to Lehigh and welcome to the Zollner Center and our annual lecture. I'm Georgette Chapman Phillips. I'm the Kevin and Lisa Clayton Dean of the College of Business and Economics. On behalf of President Simon, the College of Business and Economics, all of our faculty, students, and staff, it's my pleasure to welcome the trustees, other faculty that are joining us today, staff members, and of course, all of you students, as well as members of the community. I would like to make a special welcome to our speaker Wendell Weeks, class of 1981, which by the way is a really good class, I'm just saying. It's my class too. Kim Frock, class of 82, it's a nice runner-up, but it's not 81. And our very, very special guests, Don and Judy Gruhn, who made this event possible. Don and Judy, could you please stand, and we'd love to give you a round of applause. The College of Business and Economics is quite pleased and honored to bring nationally and internationally recognized thought leaders such as Mr. Wendell Weeks to our campus to address the important business topics of the day. You know, we pride ourselves on preparing students for success, and what better preparation than this wonderful interaction that we have with industry leaders. The Gruhn Speaker Series was established in 2008, and that's just one of the many examples that we have of extending our student educational experience beyond the classroom. Distinguished alumni, such as our dear friend Don Gruhn, who is Lehigh's class of 49, also a good class. I just read what was written here, Don. Find many avenues to give back to their alma mater. You know, you can feel Don's generosity so many places across the Lehigh campus, from endowing a scholarship fund, to contributing to the Financial Services Lab, to supporting the Martindale Society, to supporting this magnificent Zollner Art Center, journalism, athletics. Don and Judy, you are truly friends of Lehigh, and we thank you. The Gruhn Lecture Series is another way that Don supports Lehigh. We are grateful for yet another year and another wonderful speaker here on the Lehigh campus. I'd now like to invite Professor Nandu Nayar to the podium. Dr. Nayar is the chairman of the finance department, the Perella Department of Finance here at the College of Business and Economics, and he will introduce our speaker this evening.
Thank you, Georgette. I echo your sentiments and would like to thank Don and Judy for their generosity. Today is a special milestone, and you may ask why. Because this is the 10th year that we're doing the Gruhn Lecture Series, and so it's a really momentous occasion. The Speaker Series is a wonderful opportunity for our students to hear from luminaries in the business world and get insights that students don't normally get from textbooks and from lectures. So this is a fantastic opportunity. Once again, Don and Judy, thank you for making this possible. As a professor of finance, I have taught the concept of the time value of money. And believe me, I know that pretty well. But I have not figured out how to value the time that an alumnus provides when they come here to campus and interact with our students. That question stumps me. I don't know how to value that. So, this interaction can have profound effects on our young people in terms of inspiration, in terms of encouragement, in terms of hope. And so, coming back to the valuation problem that I just spoke about, there's only one thing I can say. The value is immeasurable. We don't know how to measure that value because it is immeasurable. So I urge all of you to emulate our speaker today. And when it comes to your turn, I hope that you will spend the time here on campus with our students in the future. It is a real honor for me to introduce our 2017 Gruhn speaker, Wendell Weeks. Wendell graduated from Lehigh in 1981 with his bachelor's. And then in 1987, he got his MBA from this somewhat known school in Boston called the Harvard Business School. At Harvard, he was one of the select Baker scholars. That's the top echelon of MBA graduates from the HBS. Needless to say, this habit of excelling followed him into the workplace, where he scaled the pinnacle at Corning and became the CEO in 2005. In 2007, he became chairman of the board of directors. Why is 2007 an interesting date? That's because that was the start of the Great Recession. Now, imagine this. Imagine becoming the chair of the board in a year when the bottom of the economy is falling out. What a great opportunity. Thank you, God, right? Anyway, Wendell is also on the board of directors of two other large companies, Merck and Amazon. Being a huge believer in data, I decided to see how Corning has done since the recession. So I went back and looked at data on stock prices. So on January 1st, 2009, Corning's stock price was $10 and change. Yesterday's close was $30 and change. So imagine this, $10 and change in 2009, $30 and change yesterday. That's about a 200% return. Just to put it in perspective, over the same time frame, the S&P 500 went up about 170%. So 200% for Wendell, 170 for the S&P 500. That's Lehigh. Okay. Pretty amazing for a simple company that makes glass, correct? Not exactly. Corning does not just make glass. The company operates in 5 different segments: display technologies, optical communications, environmental technologies, specialty materials, and life sciences. So it's a complex company, okay? And not only that, it is international in scope. Personally, and perhaps I'm biased, but I strongly believe that it's the Lehigh education that helps him to oversee that complex organization and produce that 200% return. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it, okay? Now, and on that unashamed promotionary note for Lehigh, it is my pleasure to welcome Wendell Weeks, Lehigh Class of '81, to address us today as the Gruhn Distinguished Speaker for 2017. Would you give him a round of applause, please?
President Simon, Dean Phillips, and for that lovely introduction, Dr. Nair. Thank you all for having me here today. I'm honored to be giving this year's Donald Gruhn lecture, and I'm very grateful for Don and Judy's endowment, which has made the Distinguished Finance Speakers series possible. It's an honor to have them in the audience today. And I really believe Lehigh is truly fortunate to have benefactors who are not only generous financially, but also deeply engaged personally. So, sustaining institutions for long-term performance. Have you ever seen a more boring title? It's got all these words that are just so boring. You have sustaining, institutions, there's one that'll blow your skirt up. Long-term and performance. But wait, it gets worse. We're going to have economic theory. We're going to have math. We're going to have indexes. We're going to have technology excellence. We're going to have manufacturing platforms. We're going to have customer market access platforms. We're even going to have theology. So you can go to sleep now. It's all good. So why would you care about this topic? Well, we're going to start with the theology. There's this very old Hasidic saying, which is, we come into this world when we're born with our hands clasped together, as if to say, this, all this is mine. We leave this world in death with our hands open, as if to say, see what I take with me? This fundamental challenge of being mortal defines us as people. And what do you do with that time between this, all this is mine, and look, what do I bring with me to find meaning? Now, different people have different answers to this. One answer some people find is to serve organizations, to serve groups, to serve something bigger than themselves, and to serve things that last beyond our lifespan. A subsegment of that is to serve institutions. It is a way to live beyond your death with your contributions carried on. So it's something I care about. It's something that I have spent a significant portion of my life doing. I use Corning here as an example, but it really applies almost anywhere. The reason I use Corning as an example is we were founded in 1851. We're 166 years old. Today, there's only 64 companies on the S&P 500 that were on the original list when it was first published in 1957. We are one of them. There are less than 13% of them remaining. And there's only 11 companies on the S&P 500 today older than Corning. Right? Yet, as you just heard about our performance, which was better than I thought it was, we're still young, still vibrant. So how do we do that, and what lessons can we take? But first, a quiz. Who is this man? Now, if you know, don't shout it out. I know he's obviously a media star, but if you know, raise your hand. Do you know who this guy is? What can we tell from looking at him? First of all, we can tell he's the type of man who goes on hikes in the mountains with a pocket hanky, a tie, and a jacket. And note the French cuffs. Any guesses? Nobody has their hand up? So I'm going to give you hints, and this will become totally clear as we go through their hints. What I'm going to share with you is this man's life goals. Right? We're going to do one at a time. And the minute this life goal gives away who this is, I want you to raise your hand. These were his 3 life goals. This is true. You cannot make this stuff up. Here we go. He wanted to be Vienna's greatest lover. So we know this man does not lack confidence. So we have a pretty good cross-section at Lehigh here. Would the person who thinks you are Lehigh's greatest lover please stand up? You're standing? No, okay. So he didn't lack confidence. Now, did this give it away? Does anybody know who this is now? We know he lived in Vienna. Next. He wanted to be Austria's greatest horseman. That give it away? Not yet? These 1 and 2 are not related to my knowledge. Subtle. Wait for it. Finally, he wanted to be the world's greatest economist. Did that give it away? Now, he says that he achieved 2 of his 3 life goals. Now, of those 3 goals, there's only one of those that has an absolute measure. That's Austria's greatest horseman. They actually have contests to sort that out. And he never won. That means he thinks he achieved 2. Not that one. I believe he achieved 1, and I never had the opportunity to test whether or not he was Vienna's greatest lover, so I don't know about that one. I do, however, think he was the world's greatest economist. This man is Joseph Schumpeter. And he did a lot of things, but one of the things I think that is most important is the concept of creative destruction. Industrial mutation, if I may use that biological term, incessantly revolutionizes the economic structure from within, incessantly destroying the old one, incessantly creating a new one. This process of creative destruction is the essential fact about capitalism. This is true. This is true. And the reason I want to share it and the things that rise from it is the process of creative destruction is accelerating. And it will mean a great deal, not only to the institutions that you think you know, but also for all of you as individuals. How do I know it's accelerating? So this is the lifespan of the S&P 500. So just to make sure no one's hands are broken, this is the business school. Who here knows what the S&P 500 is? Really? 2 of you? Awesome. Professor, please. So the S&P 500 is basically a list of companies that we turn into an index, right, of the 500 largest public firms in the country. So we're looking at the 500 biggest market caps across all the public exchanges, right? If you joined that exchange in 1960, the list goes back to 1957, you could expect to exist on that list for 60 years. In other words, you become one of the 500 largest companies, and then you live for 60 years before you either become food for others, you're replaced, you die, something, right? If you joined in 2016, your expected lifespan, 25 years. For anybody who studies biological systems, right, what this would tell you is the dieback rate is incredibly high, and the forces for evolution are incredibly high, right? First, I want you to think for a second how hard it is to develop a company that becomes one of the 500 most valuable companies in the country. And on this, if it's on our public capital markets, it is the world as well. How many other companies' butts did you have to kick to get on that list? And then you get there, and you get to live for 25 years. Wow. That's creative destruction, and you can see it comes in waves. So we live in this world of creative destruction, and it is accelerating. Let's just take a look at a shorter span. We're going to go to 2005. This is the actual list of the S&P 500 members in 2005, exactly as it would appear with one small change. They don't highlight in blue Corning and make it big. I don't know why, but they don't. By mid-2017, of those 500 companies, 229 are gone. Almost half of the 500 most successful companies, just back as in 2005, which everybody can remember, they're gone. Of the remaining 271, Corning's been blessed to grow sales and profit faster than all but 20. So how does a 166-year-old company do that? Well, it's not because of all smooth sailing. This goes back to 1945 when we first became public. And this is a chart of our NPAT by year. Throughout this time period, you can see us relatively an industrial company. We switched to be very high tech, made a huge bet on optical communications, and because we invented the first low-loss optical fiber, we participated in the communications revolution, which in turn was fueled by the internet bubble. And up until this point in time, I was running our optical communications business. We thought we were geniuses, and we reached almost $1 billion of profit. The internet bubble collapsed, and so did we. We went from making about $900 million to losing $400 million. We owed $5 billion in debt in 5 years, and we were hemorrhaging $700 million a year of cash. That will tend to focus the mind. Then we went on to do this, fueled primarily by liquid crystal displays and others of our innovations. Now, what's interesting is despite it not being smooth and despite creative destruction accelerating, right, what we have is that there is more profit here in this last period of time, more area under the curve than the previous 150-something years, right? Combined, even when about 4 times as much, even adjusted for inflation, 2 times as much. How is that possible? And it gets to the core of a question that I'm using Corning as an example for. How do you sustain institutions in general in a world of creative destruction? How do you do it? Well, there's a few rules we believe. First, you have to focus on problems that matter. Matter not to you, to society. Companies have no right to exist. There is no fundamental right given for market-based capitalism. Nothing unalienable about that, right? We serve society. Capitalism is just the most efficient way to allocate resources. But its value is measured by, does it actually do good in society? If it doesn't, people change the rules. It's just that simple. So, if you're going to sustain an institution, you must focus on problems that matter. For us, as an example, what do we focus on? We focus on creating cleaner air. We focus on creating safe, effective medicines. We focus on fundamentally changing mobile consumer electronics devices so that your loved ones are closer and you can interact with the world in new ways. And we focus on fast, reliable communication. All these things matter to society. And if you solve these problems better than anybody else, you'll do just fine. Second, you need a distinctive set of capabilities. If anyone can do what you do, then you probably won't last long. That waves of creative destruction are created primarily by other people trying to serve society in a better way than you are serving it. So you better bring a distinctive set of capabilities. You better nurture them. You better invest in them. You better become unique in some way, shape, or form. For us, we focus on 3 core technologies, 4 manufacturing and engineering platforms, and 5 market access platforms. We are, even according to our competitors, the best in the world at these things. Now, some of them are arcane things, right? But we're best in the world at them. Now, if you focus on problems that matter and you're best in the world at what you do, then you get a chance to create a track record of life-changing innovations. Little things, like when Edison created the light bulb, coming to us to find a way to make it economical. We invented something called the ribbon machine, which to this day has made every single incandescent glass envelope ever been made in the world. We don't do it anymore, but that machine does. Like glass ceramics. This is sometimes people's first experiment of it. It's actually a wonder material in that you could go from fire to ice right away. We did it originally for things like the military. It turns out its big market was that. And because of that, we created a consumer products organization way back when. Glass ceramics are still relevant today. The first low-loss optical fiber, this was a worldwide race, right, which we won. We just celebrated making and selling our billionth kilometer of fiber. Okay? To put that in perspective, take 1 billion kilometers of fiber, represents 1/3 of the fiber optics ever installed in the world. To put that into perspective, for those of you who understand the speed of light, right? The speed of light, if I were to put it end to end, let's compare it to something. Let's go around the globe at the equator. At the speed of light, you would travel around the globe in something less than 0.2 seconds. If you took 1 billion kilometers of fiber and you spliced them all together and found some place to get a laser that was powerful enough to do it, and you shot light down that, it would take 80 minutes at the speed of light to get to the end of all that fiber. And this brought on the communications revolution that you all take for granted today. Lower emissions, cleaner air. When the Clean Air Act was put in place, we had to solve the problem on that engines pollute. The unique way to solve this is a ceramic, cellular ceramic, that's something the size of a Coke can, has the area of about 3 football fields. And that's what cleans cars' emissions, about 91% of them. Flat panel displays. This is all built on a transistor-ready glass substrate that today we make. The product we sell is 100 square feet, and they make like 7 60-inch TVs or 8 60-inch TVs at a time on. Gorilla Glass, which I'm sure all of you are carrying in your pocket, right? If anybody has an Apple, a Samsung, really any phone you carry, has this on it. It was something we built for Steve Jobs originally, which now we take everywhere in the world, which is a transparent, tough, durable, scratch-resistant material that is in every one of your pockets. The world's first antimicrobial glass. You'll be happy to know that the average cell phone, when you measure it, basically has the same content on it and the same load of bacteria, viruses, and fungus as a public men's restroom toilet seat. But worry not that you put it up next to your face. Comforting. Comforting. So we've invented a glass that solves that problem. Damage-resistant pharmaceutical glass packaging, you heard me talk about. Now, this is an interesting picture. You see the president here? He doesn't look happy, does he? Can you guys see that from here, that concerned, that sort of concentrated, scrunched up face? So there's a story behind that, and the story is this product which we have invented basically to make drugs much safer than they are today for injectable biologics. Sometimes I think it's better to show than to tell. So, Mr. President, if you'll do the honors with me. Sounds good. For people in the audience, what this screen is going to show is how much force the president exerts before the vial is broken. Right? So, Mr. President, if you could please depress the lever. Okay. Just press it down. But stop. Okay, so you did okay. Pretty strong. Well, I think you ain't seen strong yet, brother. So, now let's turn to the new product that we're announcing today. This is Corning's Valor Glass, and Mr. President, if you just do the same thing, but this time, don't be afraid to lean into it a little, okay? Go on, really? Don't, it's not a test of manhood. Whoa. Priceless, okay. Right? That was priceless. I'm a longtime Hillary supporter, so that was worth the price of admission. Some things in life, they're just a gift. The triumph of science over brute force. Anyway, so that's our track record, and that's what we're here to do, is life-changing innovations. It's a purpose. It's a purpose serving something greater than ourselves. Next, you have to maintain the trust of your stakeholders. Again and again and again, you learn in finance, you learn in capital markets, you learn in legal theory that what the duty of a corporation is primarily is to its shareholders. But this is true in one sense and totally not true in another. If you want to sustain an institution, you have to maintain the trust of all your stakeholders. We exist in a broader context. Right? That's why corporations even exist at all. They're given a venue to operate within society. They must serve it. If you're going to maintain the trust of your stakeholders, we're talking about our employees, our customers, the communities in which we operate, the governments around the world that govern that operation, our environment, right? All the things we share. You must maintain the trust of all those stakeholders. And to do that, you have to be quite explicit on how you behave. For us, it is our values, and we try to live all 7 of them all the time, all around the world. When we do that well, we always maintain trust. When we do that poorly, we breach that trust. And when we breach that trust, we endanger our ability to sustain ourselves. Collaborate with others who share your vision. I think this is one of the most important things to take away, is people view capitalism way too much as a competition. And in some ways, it is, right? But it is also primarily, truly, at its core, a collaboration mechanism. Because if it's forced allocation of resources and talent, you're going to lead to aggregations of different skill sets. And to really create life-changing innovations, life-changing products, life-changing services, you're going to need to collaborate with others. So you're looking for other people who share your vision. And that is sort of the hidden purpose of capitalism, is to make sure we don't do everything ourselves, but instead to allow for a more perfect allocation of resources and talents and to collaborate well. To do that, you have to articulate a vision and find people who share it. And here is a good example of that.
Apple announced a advanced manufacturing fund, and so it's only fitting that the first commitment from that fund be for Corning and specifically for Harrodsburg, where so much of our history is. And so we're announcing today that we're committing $200 million for capital and R&D to support continued work here on advanced glass technologies. Corning's been such an integral part of our past that it's really only appropriate that the future is a future we should share together.
We could have a very competitive relationship. We have a collaborative one because they are uniquely good at what they do and we're uniquely good at what we do. And how you engage others in a way that is mutually beneficial is really a critical thing, both in your life and in business. So, that's why I care about sustaining institutions in a time of creative destruction. And for those of you who are dedicated to Lehigh, it is just so appropriate as well, because Lehigh also is 152 years young and is undergoing its own set of changes to try to remain relevant going forward, while at the same time staying quite true to its values. And I hope some of you at least found this interesting, and I think now we're doing Q&A, right? If anybody's interested in the story behind Gorilla and Steve Jobs and all that, and how Apple ended up there, I'd be happy to share it.
Thank you, Wendell. That was truly inspirational and informative. We're going to start the Q&A now. There are 2 microphones here on either side, and I will ask you, first of all, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Come to the microphones to ask your questions. Okay? So I'm going to start off the questioning while our students are formulating their questions in their heads. And Wendell, I want to bring you back to where our students are sitting today as a Lehigh undergraduate. Knowing what you know now about running a business, about making hard decisions in what must have been an incredible time when you went from such a high earnings to falling to below zero. What gives you inspiration to keep on going when the times are tough?
I think that's really simple. For me then and for me now is actually the other people that you're in it with. Leadership is fundamentally about followership. Peter Drucker, a great writer on executive leadership, someone asked him one time, what is the most important trait in a leader? You've studied it your entire career. And he said, followers. And in that concept, it sounds so simple, but it's so hard. And really what drives you and what needs to drive you is how do you maintain the trust of those who basically are saying, I'm going to let you make certain decisions for the benefit of us all. And when you keep that trust, right, things tend to work out well. And when you don't, you have to fix it. So for me, I always found energy in those folks who were also working with me to try to make us be successful in trying times.
Thank you. Oh, come on, you guys are Lehigh students. You cannot be that shy. I'll give you some time to get up there.
There we go. Hi. So you've been at Corning for a number of decades, and I hear sometimes a complaint of some alumni or people in the industry that people our generation tends to bounce around between companies too much. What was the reason that kept you working at Corning or the same company for so many years in your career?
Well, so the question is, since everybody tends to bounce around from company to company, why was I so boring to stay at the same place for 3 decades? That about get it?
Yeah.
That got it? Good. Good. For me, really the reason I joined Corning is the reason I stay at Corning. For me, Jeff's actually a professor in the room who knew me back when. For me, neither of my parents went to college. Both were high school graduates only. Both had a number of different issues. And so I came from a pretty unstable background. And I didn't really know that much about how to be the type of person that I wanted to be. And I joined Corning to be surrounded by people that were better than me, so that in turn I'd be better. And I find myself still in the situation of being surrounded by people who are better than me, and therefore I have the capability and potential to get better. And the moment that stops will probably be for the time for me to leave. So that's why I stayed there.
Thank you.
Go to this side.
Hi, Mr. Weeks.
It's Wendell.
Wendell.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty broad question, so bear with me. So what do you think is the most important choice that you've made in your career? In that sense, like the choice that's impacted the direction that you decided to go the most?
In my career,
Yes.
okay, my most important choice was marrying my wife, but did I get that right? Yeah, she's here, so. No. In my career, I think it was that I was lucky enough, and it ties to the previous question, I was lucky enough to find something I was super passionate about doing. I've really spent the bulk of my career doing product development and to bring products that are unique to the world out, and working with small teams to do that. To this day, even though I'm CEO, I probably spend 60, 70% of my time still working on small innovation teams and working with customers to do that. I'm tremendously passionate about it. And that is what makes me go to work every day. So I think the biggest decision and the hardest thing, I think, if I were in your shoes to try to figure out is, what are you actually passionate about? Because when I was a student, I was probably worried about all the wrong things. You worry about how am I going to repay my debt. You're worried about getting a job. You're worried about making money. You're worried about how much money will I make. What's the right career track? And frankly, all that stuff takes care of itself, man. You went to Lehigh. You've won the lottery. You're going to be just fine. The hard work of life, find what you're passionate about doing. Find that. Find who you're joyful to work with. Find that. Right? That's hard. And the people you see that are happiest in this life are people who have found that. They aren't the people who made the most money.
And did you always know that you wanted to do product development, or was that something you discovered along the way?
It was something I discovered along the way. I mean, Corning is one. Well, I discovered first that I wasn't that good at accounting and finance. That left me at a conundrum. Now, Corning is the type of place that believes you're constantly learning and you have to learn new things. And so I actually happened upon a situation where, to make the business survive, we needed to come up with something very new. And I really cared about the people in the plant to make sure I preserved their jobs. So I ended up taking a small team and going to work on this, learning all the science I needed to, all the engineering part that I needed to be able to come up with that product. And I ended up falling in love with doing that, right? And that's what's propelled me ever since. It was a surprise to me, and I think a surprise to my supervisor.
Thank you.
A little high. So Corning operates in many different business segments. So how do you manage those challenges, and what are some of the biggest challenges associated with operating in different segments?
That's a great question. I think the biggest challenge to operating in different segments is, should they be part of the same organization or not? And so to the extent that they're organized so that the core thing that makes them successful is core technologies that are shared amongst the other segments, or core manufacturing and engineering platforms that are shared amongst the other segments, or customers that can be shared between the market access platforms. I think the biggest problem with running very large technical conglomerates is, why do these grouping of assets and businesses belong together? And how do you create a reinforcing piece so that your position in any one business is strengthened by the fact you're in another, and that you are the uniquely right economic operator of that asset set? That's probably the most challenging thing to do. The rest has to do with, how do you deal with globalization? Probably only about 20% of our revenues are in North America. So 80% of what we do is somewhere else. And so how do you run a large global spanning operation where your customers are from all over the world and your operations are spread accordingly? That is also a unique sort of team challenge, cultural challenge, values challenge that also takes a lot of time.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned before that you constantly have people that are smarter and better than you are. What about mentors? Have you had mentors in life, and how do you find one?
Yeah, so the question is, have I had mentors in life? Yes, and still do. I am constantly stunned by the way different people think about opportunities and approach problems. And I learn from them all the time. And I think you'll find it too. So we tend to think about mentors as someone senior to you who sees you through. And sometimes that's quite true, right? Sometimes it can be a professor, right? Sometimes it can be a supervisor. Sometimes it can be some other force in your life, right? Parents, can be all sorts of things. But I'd also urge you to look at your peers and colleagues. And for me, for people that work for me, at least technically, I find mentor me in different aspects of my life all the time. And if you've got a sort of an open heart and a mind that's open to learn and not get caught up with whatever the hierarchy is in front of you, man, it's unbelievable how much people will help you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
The philosophies in different businesses today are very, very varied. And one of the things
Could you repeat the first part of that question? I'm sorry.
The philosophies
The philosophy.
of different companies
Yes.
today have a big span of variables. And one of the things that you had mentioned was that Corning looked at things that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions for people as we're looking at whatever age to what things we become involved in? How do you pick out which companies you would look at to find things that matter to you that would be in line with things that matter with the company or the organization or whatever you're looking at? And did you do that when you were first looking for a job?
That's a great question. So yes, I did. What I was primarily looking for were people with values that I viewed were superior to the ones that I held, so that I could adopt them and become a better person. And I found that where I was at, where I joined. to spread that to more general, I think you actually, in your question, was the answer, which is, what is it you care about, right? And can you find folks who care about that same thing in one way, shape, or form? If you've got a product that really speaks to you, or something you really want to work on, believe me, there are folks working on it. And finding that what that is, I think is a great, most challenging thing about a career, is finding that match between those things. And it takes a lot of introspection, and it also takes a lot of asking questions of others all at the same time.
Hi. How did you go from being a college student, just like everybody else, to becoming the CEO of one of the 500 largest companies in the country?
Yeah. How did I do that?
Yes.
Dude, luck. Of course. I mean, seriously, I mean, it sounds like a flippant answer, but, you know, yeah, there's all these ingredients, right? There's, yeah, you got to work hard. Yeah, you need to do something you're really passionate about. And yeah, you got to do it with people you really love working with, right? But then on top of that, your relative degree of success, I must say, luck has so much to do with life. And that's why you can't pin your happiness on what form of external recognition you get, what job you make, how much dough you make, right? Don't focus on that, man. Focus on the inputs. Focus on something you're going to be excited to work really hard on, because if you're not working really hard, believe me, someone else is, right? Finding people you love working with and finding something you're passionate to work on. You do those things and you'll be happy. And then it could be that being happy, doing what makes you happy, turns into external recognition, turns into you achieving what it is, whatever the pinnacle of your particular career choice is. Or it could be it doesn't, but it doesn't matter because you're happy.
Very true.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? We have one more there? Sure.
Lehigh students, if you want an interesting, wonderful company to work for, it's Corning. I joined Corning in 1956 as a junior accountant. I hated accounting. I wound up opening the Southeast Asia offices for Corning, headquartered in Hong Kong and Tokyo. We moved because we were forced out of Hong Kong by Mao Zedong. We expected an invasion, but we should have been in Tokyo anyway. Join Corning, Lehigh students. You'll love it.
That's a great advertisement. Do we have any other questions? Heinz? Yeah. Well, that's a great note to end on. And Wendell, I really have to thank you for an outstanding presentation and interaction with our students. Let's give Mr. Weeks another round of applause. And we have a gift.
Oh, thank you.
It's really heavy, though. I just want to tell you that before you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Dean. Thanks, everybody.
Wait.
Oh.
We're not done. We have one more thing we just have to do. We have to invite Don and Judy
Oh, great.
up on stage. It's just great. This is our 10th year of Gruhn Lectures, and I joined CBE in 2014, and I have to say, each fall, when these lectures roll around, is one of my favorite moments at Lehigh and at CBE. And in recognition of the 10 years of dedication that Don and Judy Gruhn have shown to Lehigh University and to CBE and to the Gruhn Lecture Series. We just have a little plaque to commemorate the occasion.
That's so terrific.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. I think there are probably some 4
That's
o'clocks
great.
you need to study
Thank
for.
you, man.
And we'll see you next year. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad.